Hi guys, welcome to video number 4 in the beginner Excel tutorial series, and today we're going to be talking about if statements. Now, the things we're going to cover, 4 parts, it's going to be what are if statements, 2, why you would want to use if statements, and then we're going to go to examples in part 3, and then we're going to go to kind of some advanced examples in part 4 with nested ifs. So, first off, what is an if statement? It's just telling a computer to do something based on a condition. So far with formulas we've just done like, hey, just add these things together, and now the kind of idea is we're going to be setting up spreadsheets where it says, okay, if, so that's where the name the if comes from, if this condition is true or if it's false or whatever, then do something else. And probably the best way to think of this first is to look at this diagram I have right here. So the way it works is you take some information, which is represented by this top black dot, and you put it into the if statement, which is kind of this little diagonal or rectangular object. And what happens is the condition is either evaluated as being true or false. It's either 1 or 0, there's nothing else. And you tell the computer to do something if it's true and something else if it's false. So in a way, you've kind of already been doing if statements, except for that it's going to be the same whether it's true or false. So it'd be like this diagram, except for both true and false point to the same thing. So you can actually get true and false statements to appear in Excel pretty easily if you just go to a cell and you press equals, and then you can do like, some statements. So you go like, let's do sum of 1, 2 or 1, 2 equals 3. And you'll see that it evaluates to true. So if we go over that and then press F2 to get inside of it, and let's delete the 3 and replace it with a 4, you'll see that you get false. Now, that's all good, but one thing we're going to want to be able to do is use cell references. So I'm going to delete this and just type in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll do, 1, 3, 4, 4. And I'll go over here and just go equals, and then L5, and then equals N5. And so we'll see it's true, and then I'm going to go Control C, and then Control Shift down arrow key, or Shift down arrow key, and hit Control V, and you'll see that we have the same thing where it's false, and then if you press F2, it's false because 2 is not equal to 3, and then false again because 3 is not equal to 4, but then true because 4 is equal to 4. So you can kind of see that you have, with these if statements, this is how you create the true or false statement at the beginning. It's some kind of a statement. And it can be based off of numbers you just put into the if statement, or it can also be based off of cells. So if we go in now and press equals if to get the function out, you'll see that the way the argument works is you have this logical test, which is what we're doing here, and then you have what you want the equation to do, or what you want the function to do if it's true, and what you want it to do if it's false. So what we'll do now is we'll go in here, and I'm just going to do a dummy one. Let's say we're going to go equals if, and then we're going to say, let's say if this cell is greater than 2, then we'll do the value if that's true. We'll say, and if you want to do a text response, you type with quotes, you go bigger than 2, end quote, and then you do comma to put in the false response, and you say smaller than 2, and parentheses, and boom. And so I'm going to go Control C, and then Control Shift down, Control V, and if you press the top arrow button here to just kind of wind it out, we get that, okay, is equal to, this is smaller than 2, this is bigger than 2, this is bigger than 2, but then you see that for 2, it actually doesn't work. So when you want to create these logical statements, there's kind of 6 ones that you can do, which you can do is equal to, so, and I'll just type these out, so you can do is equal to, you can do is greater than or equal to, you can do is less than or equal to, you can do is greater than, you can do is less than, and then now the one that a lot of people don't know is not equal to, and it's actually like that. It's kind of a weird one, but basically for these are the statements you can use for a logical and for logical statement, and you can do a value equal to a value, or you can do text equal to text. With text equal to text, it's worth noting that it has to be an exact match. It is case sensitive. So with that out of the way, why would you want to use ifs? And there's kind of two big answers, and they're kind of the same but also different at the same time. One is to flag numbers or flag data, and then the other is to sort data. So we'll kind of get into that with some examples, but basically it's really good for if you want to do different things to data depending on the value or depending on something. Just whenever you want to do something conditional is when it makes sense. And two really big examples for that are sorting and flagging information. So a good example for flagging would be, say, you're looking at sales information and you want to flag all of the sales that were made in a given state. Or if you want to sort information, you want to sort it based on, the number of orders that were completed with less than 50 items ordered and more than 50 items ordered, or something like that. So with that out of the way, let's go over to the next tab in the sheet. And by the way, as usual, this is going to be available in the description, this workbook. So if you want to go ahead and download that, now would be a good time to take a pause and get that, just so it'll be easier to follow along. So what we have here is a table of teams, and they have the number of wins and the number of losses that each one has, and we're trying to figure out if it's a winning team. So a winning team just means that the number of wins is greater than the number of losses. And so before we jump right into the if statement, let's just make a logical statement out of that. So I'm going to go into F4 here and type equals, and then we want when the wins are greater than losses. So that'll be D4 is greater than losses, which is E4. Now you could do equals, but we don't want that because if the wins equal the losses, then they're not technically a winning team. So you hit enter and you'll see that it's false because this is a losing team. They have 32 wins and 128 losses. And if you just go Control C and then you go Shift and hold down, and because we don't want to mess with the formatting, we'll go right click. Why is it not doing that? We'll go right click and then paste special formulas only. We're going to get that the teams with less wins than losses are going to be losing teams, and the teams with more wins, like the Cubs here, with 125 and 35, are going to be winning teams. So what we'll do now is, we have the logical statement. What we'll do is we'll go in and we're going to go in and type if, parentheses, and that's the logical test there, and then we'll go comma, and if it's a winning team, let's just put a Y, so in quotations we'll go Y for yes, and then if not, we'll go comma, and then parentheses or quotation marks N parentheses. So now we'll hit enter, and you'll see that you get an N for no, and so we'll go Control C, Control Shift down, right click. Oh, I messed it up there. Sorry. Control Shift down, right click, paste special formulas, and boom. So now, and I'm just going to go ahead and go and center those. Now you can see we have a flag, and this is kind of what I was talking about, for whether or not it's a winning team. And one thing that's really powerful you can do with this is if you go ahead and select the top and then go up to data, and we'll talk about this more later, and then go to filters, you can actually click on this little arrow button here and choose either yes or no to, if you want to view, say just the teams that have winning records, which isn't that many, or just the teams that have losing records. So that's a really powerful way to look at a spreadsheet and kind of cut through the noise if you want to look at stuff that has a certain characteristic about it. So with that out of the way, let's go to celebrities, and here's a kind of a similar table, and we have people and the country they're from. So here it's worth noting that there's actually you can actually have more complex logical statements. So up to this point, we've just done if something is equal to something or not. And what you can have here is also or statements and statements. So what an or does, and we'll talk about this more in a separate video, but an or basically has it set up so that if one of a few different characteristics is set, then it evaluates to true. So for example, you can say that if the value is equal to 1 or 2, then it's true. So I'm going to go in here and change this instead of US to USA, and I'll go and change another one to USA. And the way it works in Excel is you type equals and then or, and then within each of these you type a separate logical statement. Once again, I will go ahead and make another video on this, but the reason I'm doing this is because we want American people, which can be, their country of origin can either be US or USA. So we can go and click D3 equals US, and you gotta do it in parentheses because it's text, or, and then Germany, which in this case is D3 equals USA. So you go in parentheses and hit enter, and you can see that it's false, and when we go Control C, Shift down, Control V, you see that right here, if you go down to E11, and I'm just going to select this whole part of the table, but we go to Home and highlight it, even though this is USA and this is US, because it's an OR statement, it's selected both. Now the other way to do it is you can do and for an and you have to satisfy all the requirements at the same time. We won't cover that in this video, but that's another logical operator, and it works, or logical function in Excel, and it works the same way. That being said, what we'll do is we're going to go in here and type in if. So if, and then parentheses, and then we'll go, and it's very similar to the previous example. We're just going to go comma, and then quotation mark, y, and then comma, quotation mark, and end comma, and end quote. And then we'll go second parentheses and hit enter. And we'll go Control C, Control Shift down, Control V, and then we'll center it. And you can see that we have the same layout as before. Now one thing that you can do here is you can do conditional formatting, which is really useful, and you can go and I'm actually going to get rid of this highlighting, but you can go and select the column and then go up here to conditional formatting. It's under the Home tab, and just press it down, and we want to add highlight cell rules. And what you can do is you can set it up so that if the text contains something, then the cell is selected. So we're going to go in and say if the cell contains, and we're going to select this entire range. Oh, sorry, I messed that up. We're just going to type in N. Okay. Oh, I messed that up. Sorry, so going to type conditional formatting, text that contains, and then just type in N. And hit OK, and you can see that we have it set up so that if it's N, if the cell's N, then it's going to be highlighted with red background and red text. And then you can see if we go in and change this, the cell updates, because you press F2, you see that it's referencing the D3, and then it changes colors. So Control Z to change it back to how it was before, and that's a pretty useful tool. It's pretty helpful just because it makes it a lot easier to highlight data and especially do it dynamically. So the last thing we're going to focus on in this video is kind of the more advanced example, and it's going to be what's called a nested if. So when you type in the formula equals if, and then I'm just going to put in, we'll say just true, and then 1, and then whatever, you can actually put another if statement. And basically you have to be careful with these, because if you get too many ifs, it can get really complicated what's happening. But you can have it set up where if the logical expression evaluates to false, then you have another if statement that goes into that. And it's essentially, if we're going to go back to the start over here, essentially you have another one of these diagrams in the false, and you can put it in the true as well. It's a lot more common to see it in false, but it's just something to keep in mind. And so the reason you do it is because, and we're going to go over here to the scores, nested ifs. The reason you do it is because it saves a lot of space on a spreadsheet, and it can make things go by a lot simpler. But I'm going to show you a few different ways to deal with this. So that being said, let's get on to this final kind of advanced problem. So for this class here, we have a bunch of students and their scores on the first and second test. Now let's say that in order to pass, and I'll just type this in order to pass, you must score we'll call it 70. So that means that greater than or equal to 70 is a pass. So we'll type in, and this is just pass practicing the logical operator, we'll go equals this score, C3, is greater than or equal to 70. And we get true, and then we're going to go Control C down over here, and then Control V up. And then we'll do paste special, oh sorry. shift, hold down, and then we'll go paste special and formulas. Now what we'll do is, because it's the same dimensions, we're going to go and Control C that entire column and go over to F3 and hit Control V. And you can see that we have for all of these test scores whether or not the student passed or failed. Now, what you can do here is we want to know if they passed both, and there's a couple different ways to do that, but one is you can do a nested if. So in order to pass both, you need to have it be true both times. So what you can do is you go equals if, and then the logical test will be if C3 is greater than or equal to 70, and then we'll have another if statement, and we're just going to put in another parentheses to just have as a placeholder, but then comma, and then if they're not above 70, then we know that they didn't pass both tests, so we can just go parentheses, or sorry, quotation marks n and quotation marks. And what you do now is you go into the second if statement, and this is where the nested if thing comes through, and you go, and then we go if E3 is greater than or equal to 70, and so both of these cases are true, then we go quotation marks y and quotation marks comma, and then quotation marks n and quotation marks, and you hit enter. And so we'll see that because this first student, they got a 98 and an 88, which are both greater than 70, we see that they passed. So you go to Control C, and then if you hold Shift down and press Control V, and actually, well, Control Z because I didn't do that right, we're going to go paste special and you go formulas, and it'll work for all of them. And so if you go through and look at any examples, you see this person is not doing so well, got a 53 on the first test and a 46 on the second test, so they failed both. So this is, and now you can kind of see why, and we'll go in and just F2 this, why these equations can get kind of confusing is because this is a pretty simple one and it's already getting pretty long. But in fact, this is actually a better time to use an and statement because it's going to be a little bit shorter and it's going to be harder for you to make mistakes. And that's one thing you're going to run into with ifs that get kind of annoying and confusing. It's just it gets easier and easier to make mistakes. So let's hit backspace and delete that. We're going to go equals, and then we'll go and actually let's just do this instead. I'm going to go Control Z, and we'll do a second test just to see if it's the same. And let's go equals and we'll go this is greater than or equal to 70, and then comma, this is greater than or equal to 70. And you go in parentheses and enter, and you'll see that it's getting the same as pass both. So yes and true are the same. So if we go Control C, Shift, hold all the way down, and then go Control V, you're going to see that they always match up. So here it's false, and it's the same one that we looked at earlier where they did not pass both tests. In fact, they passed neither. So the point here is that a lot of times, and I'll go ahead and just F2 to get in here and fill it out, we'll go if, and then we'll put a comma, quotation y, and quotation n, and quotation, and that's for the true and the false, condition. You'll see that, and we'll go Control C down, that it agrees on every time. It agrees for every student. But if you go into this first one and press F2, you're going to see that the equation is kind of messy, whereas if you go to the second one, it's quite a bit neater. And so that's kind of the point of why sometimes it makes sense to use nested ifs, but also sometimes it makes sense to use and statements. And I'm going to have another video sometime soon about and statements and or statements, but I just wanted to show and kind of talk about some of the times when it makes sense to use if statements instead of and statement, or nested ifs instead of just a regular if statements. So with that being said, thanks for watching, and look forward to making some more videos and having you guys watch them in the future.